where the guy is high on a legal marijuana cookie, how can you continue to insist that pot be legalized? And I'm not talking about medical marijuana. So don't start up with that. I'm talking about recreational marijuana.
Because, Nancy, I'm not going to let the isolated stories you drag off the internet impact and affect the millions of Americans who use marijuana responsibly and do not impair or impact society negatively.
Norm,
you're the one who's sending out the bad message.
You stated that we dragged this off the internet, when actually that's a police 911 call that you just heard. So are you suggesting that somehow it's not real because it was written about on the internet? Are you saying the 911 call is not real?
No, I'm saying your argument is not real because you take isolated instances of aberrant behavior and try to make them standardized for all marijuana users. And once and for all, Nancy, have you no conscience? When will this stop? When will you own up to the fact that millions and millions of Americans can light up a joint and have been since the age of Woodstock without impairing families, driving recklessly,
I was really just looking for an answer to the question, but obviously you're stoned. Let me go out to Dr. Michael Arnold.
Well, you know what Aldo Guthrie once said, in a straight world, you need to be stoned.
In Denver, Colorado. Dr. Arnold, you're there. You're in the middle of it all. Everyone, Dr. Arnold joining us from Denver, where the Colorado Assembly deemed it okay to legalize recreational use of pot. Dr. Arnold, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I can tell you that it's relatively common to find THC, marijuana, in the blood after individuals either shoot or hang themselves, get in front of guns and are shot during homicides. We're finding it relatively common in children. We do toxicology on kids under the age of 5, and we do hair toxicology to see what type of ambient environment in which the kids live. So it's common to see dead children with THC in their hair. So my impression is that there is just an appalling human carnage associated with this psychotropic drug.
Let's go back to Norm Kemp, Brad Lamb, and Dr. Drew Pinsky. Dr. Drew, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, you know, the story I agree with Norm, actually, believe it or not. The story you dragged out about the man eating the marijuana cookie could just as easily be a drug withdrawal syndrome from the prescription drugs he was taking. In fact, the cannabis may have just been incidental. Now, I'm not saying cannabis is not associated with psychotic episodes. I'm not saying that the forensic pathologist is not right. There are human consequences from this drug. But that has nothing to do with the argument about whether it should be legal or illegal. It's just the facts about the relationship with the drug.
Dr. Drew.
Nancy.
I really appreciate Dr. on call. I do. I'm a big fan. But you're in our house now. All right? So you can't just throw out a fact
you don't get to talk.
Okay, Norm, just try to get it out of your system so I can address Drew on this. Dr. Drew, you can't just throw out a fact unless you have backup for it. Now, do you have any evidence that this man that just guns down his wife in front of his children was having withdrawal from some other drug?
In the police report that you say is the factual matter that you've taken off the internet, there were empty pill bottles found in his room. And the fact is, he may have, there's a common thing right now is that people are being dismissed from their medical care because they get carried away with their opiates and their benzodiazepine. They go into withdrawal, and in fact, they use pot to try to deal with the withdrawal from the prescription meds.
To Justin Fryman, let's try to get the facts here, because there's an empty pill bottle in his room does not mean that he killed her. I want to see Dr. Drew, please, because he's having a medical withdrawal from drugs. All right? Nothing in this police report that I also have says that he was coming down from withdrawal. Nothing. You, Dr. Drew,
why do they mention the empty bottles then, Nancy? They empty as evidence. The empty bottles are presented as evidence. Why do they mention that then if it has nothing to do with the story?
Because if you're familiar with police reports, and especially in homicide cases, they write down every single thing that they can that may be involved in the case. In this case, there's nothing to suggest that the pill bottles had anything to do with this. As a matter of fact, Justin Fryman, isn't it true that the father reacted this way after he has a marijuana cookie? He went berserk.
That's true, Nancy. And also, police say that the only substance found in his blood was THC, which shows the marijuana in his system.
Okay, hold on. Back to Drew.
Again, the withdrawal from the other medicines are what the case I'm making.
In his blood was okay, Dr. Arnall, can you analyze that for me? The only thing found in this man's blood was pot-related. What does that mean?
There's probably a couple of subsets of individuals. And in that sense, Norm probably said something that's accurate in the sense that some people respond to marijuana in a catastrophically bad fashion, others don't. The first problem is you can't tell the difference. Second, Dr. Drew is in some sense correct. Many of the individuals that we see with THC also have methamphetamine, cocaine, other substances in the blood. That leaves
But this guy didn't, Dr. Arnall. This guy doesn't.
That's correct. And there's a subset of individuals. You got a case of a person who shot his wife. There was a kid here who had an epiphany while only on THC. And his epiphany, his word, not mine, was to repeatedly stab himself in the neck and in the chest. I did his autopsy. There are a subset of individuals who exercise extraordinarily bad judgment on
Dr.
THC
Arnall,
alone.
Okay, I appreciate where Drew is headed. But the facts govern this case, Dr. Arnall. There's nothing in this father's bloodstream but pot-related substances.
But Nancy, that's very much my point. All the drugs would be out. He would be in withdrawal because everything is out of his system. He would necessarily, that makes my case.
Actually, the fact that there's nothing in his system, there's no suggestion.
Makes the case for withdrawal. Makes the case for withdrawal. Withdrawal only happens when everything's out of the system.
Well,
where were the pills at his bedside? Why isn't that still in his bloodstream?
You know,
ridiculous.
Dr. Arnall,
I see this all the time.
Dr. Arnall, you've really poured gas on the flame here. The facts in this case are that he was high after this pot cookie. His blood indicates no other drug. There's no
Therefore, in withdrawal from the medicines he had been prescribed.
Nancy, you are correct. The most likely explanation is the obvious psychotropic drug that was present.
You know what? Let's roll that thought, Liz. Take a listen, Dr. Drew.
It would be malpractice to say that cannabis isn't addictive. And anybody that has experienced it, actually been addicted to it, knows how profound that addiction is. And, of course, Gaga is speaking from experience, and God bless her for pointing out exactly that, which it is a relatively safe drug, which for some people can be profoundly addictive. And it's, you know, it's easy to tell when you're addicted when you just love it more than anything else. It's all you think about. It's what you're going to do. The sort of difficult thing about marijuana addiction is some people, even though they're addicted, can do fine with it for many, many, many years before they start to have difficulty. But eventually, the high starts wearing off. People start smoking a lot more to try to get that high back, and that's when they descend into difficulties.
A story regarding a Wyoming college student, just 19 years old, who plunges to his death high on a marijuana cookie that his friend got him. He was there visiting in Denver and plunges off a Holiday Inn roof, a balcony, and that cookie was legal. Open me up, please, to Norm Kent, Brad Lamb, and Dr. Drew Pinsky, host of Dr. Drew on Call. Brad Lamb, explain to me what's happening.
It's like when Prohibition was ushering in and moving alcohol out of our dialogue. All we heard was the negatives about alcohol, and that's what we're seeing now with pot. It's this constant battle between the great things that the proponents of legalization want you to know about pot, and then there are people like me who see some of my sickest patients are primary pot addicts. And even Dr. Drew has talked in the past about how it can be terribly addictive, and that 1 in 5 teens who start smoking as a teen are going to get very, very sick from it, Nancy. That's the big point here.
Dr.
Norm
Drew?
wants to just push.
100%. 100%. Every word in that tape you played before the commercial break, I don't disagree with anything I said there. That has the addictive properties of a drug have nothing to do with it being a good or bad drug or whether it should or shouldn't be legalized. That's a separate matter for the people to decide. Listen, OxyContin is a terrible drug if you're an opiate addict. If you have cancer, it's a lifesaver.
Okay, again, Dr. Drew, I am not arguing with you or Norm Kent about legalization of marijuana for medicinal purposes. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about the recreational use of marijuana being legalized. So I don't understand. Dr. Drew, you've helped so many people, and so many people look to you. You say it's extremely addictive, but that's okay to legalize it. I don't understand that.
I do not think there's any logic into calling a drug good or bad. If you want to call a drug good or bad, then my God, we have to illegalize alcohol and tobacco too.
Okay,
if
well, what about crack?
No, but you would draw the line with meth, wouldn't you, Dr. Drew? You would draw the line. Meth. Would you say
in Portugal right now, they're having good results with legalization of everything. It's not for me to decide the laws. We deal with the health consequences.
Okay.
There are going to be some dire health consequences from legalization. There will be, and we will deal with it. But that's not up to me to decide the law. I'm not a legislator.
But you're advocating the legalization.
The thing that's so important is...
I'm not advocating anything. I'm advocating that the people should have what they want. And
well,
if Norm is representing the people and they want that, listen, I've got the recent data from Colorado. It's not good. There are going to be a lot of stuff going on, but there'll health consequences. But we'll deal with that. We will deal with that. In the meantime, it doesn't make it a good or a bad drug. The relationship with the drug is the problem.
Okay, go ahead, Brad. But Brad, what do you think about the fact that the vast majority of states disallow pot for recreational purposes? To me, the people have spoken.
I think it's a big conundrum.
Give me another 5 years
is marching across the country. That's why, Nancy, 2 years ago, when I remember I told you some of my sickest clients these days are people that are getting addicted to edibles. They're smoking joints that have so much more THC than what their parents and their grandparents were smoking, that this is a real problem in real time that's harming a lot of people. And that's why we dreamed up the POP Project, which is now $2 million of free beds for people whose loved ones are addicted to pot.